The unprecedented storm system impacted the Detroit metropolitan area with the kinetic force of a sledgehammer strike. Through the frost-locked visual barrier of her aging front window, 72-year-old Dorothy Washington monitored the dissolution of 9 high-displacement motorcycles beneath the escalating snow fall. 9 leather-clad giants assumed position on her crumbling porch structure, ice adhering to their beards, terminal physiological desperation visible in their eyes. The exterior thermal reading was dropping to minus 15 degrees Celsius. Without immediate operational shelter, any asset caught in this unavoidable weather event would achieve physiological failure tonight. Her arthritic hands exhibited a stress tremor on the deadbolt, not from the cold, but from tactical fear. These assets could execute total physical override in seconds, seize every item of value, inflict unsanctioned damage she could not immediately process, yet they were human life forms, and they were facing terminal incapacitation outside her perimeter. Dorothy was forced into an impossible operational decision: execute lockdown and authorize the freezing demise of 9 strangers, or breach the security barrier and risk total asset loss. Before we move forward, comment down from where you're watching and what time it is there right now. Prove you're monitoring this critical situation. What she failed to register was that the man standing at the center of the deployment was not a typical biker. He was a Tier 1 asset who carried operational rank and authority. Her imminent decision would execute total transformation on 9 lives and recalibrate the entire operational reality of her neighborhood forever. But prior to that life-changing tactical moment, Dorothy Washington was engaged in a financial combat scenario she was predestined to lose. At 72 cycles, Dorothy occupied a 2-story residential structure that was systematically achieving structural failure around her. The paint was delaminating from the siding like old skin. Shingles had executed detachment during the prior year's storms, exposing critical vulnerabilities on the roof where water executed uncontrolled ingress. Every morning at 5:30 hours, Dorothy prepared instant coffee with powdered milk. Real cream was a financial luxury she could not authorize on her $1,200 Social Security transfer. She would assume position at her kitchen table, reading her worn spiritual doctrine by the light of a single bulb, praying for the operational strength to survive another day cycle. The house required a minimum of $15,000 in structural maintenance, a non-viable financial objective. The furnace unit wheezed and rattled, struggling to heat rooms that failed to retain thermal energy through cracked window seals. Dorothy utilized 3 layers of thermal clothing indoors during the winter cycle, her breath visible in the kitchen on certain mornings. When precipitation occurred, she deployed pots and buckets around the structure to capture dripping water. The steady ping-ping-ping resonated through the empty structural voids like a countdown timer. Her medication inventory documented the severity of her financial sacrifices. Blood pressure medication designated for daily intake was rationed to bi-daily ingestion. Diabetes medication was stretched to the maximum limit because the prescription cost exceeded her weekly food procurement budget. She had been forced to execute terminal choices between physiological survival and nutritional intake. Every Tuesday, Dorothy executed 6 blocks of transit to the grocery procurement center with a calculator in her purse. She would summate all pricing as she shopped, terminating the procurement of items when the total exceeded $47. That was her authorized weekly food budget after mandatory payments for housing, utilities, and medical necessity. The operational zone around her was also achieving failure. 3 residential structures on her block stood abandoned, their windows boarded up like closed eyes. Failed street illumination systems left long stretches of absolute darkness where unsanctioned activity could manifest. Young men executed gatherings on street corners, exhibiting tactical suspicion of law enforcement assets, but always maintaining respect protocol when they passed Dorothy's porch. "Morning, Miss Dot," they would transmit. She'd execute a return wave, acknowledging their mothers had implemented the correct ethical parameters, even if the streets were attempting to implement failure. Despite the adverse operational reality, Dorothy maintained absolute standards. She sterilized her front steps every morning, hydrated dying house plants with recycled dishwater, and maintained an American flag display prominently despite the missing shingles above it. Her late husband, Robert, had executed service in Vietnam, and that flag signified a non-negotiable parameter. The old CB radio from Robert's trucking days remained operationally active, crackling occasionally with unidentified vocal transmissions. Sometimes she'd intercept motorcycle groups communicating in unintelligible coded transmissions. The radio was one of the few external communication assets she had when her cell phone exhibited zero signal. Dorothy's posture remained military straight despite her hardships. Robert had implemented the knowledge that dignity was non-transferable due to poverty. She still baked caloric supplements for neighborhood children when she could authorize the ingredients, permitted them access to her facilities when they played outside, and provided caloric input to stray animals with food she could barely spare for herself. The loneliness was the highest operational cost. Her daughter, Regina, occupied a location in California, establishing her own family unit. Her son, Jerome, was executing deployment overseas, serving his country like his father had. Dorothy terminated the option of soliciting assistance. She refused designation as a burden, would not execute emotional manipulation to force them to sacrifice their futures for her comfort. Some mornings Dorothy would assume position at her kitchen sink, monitoring the failed neighborhood and whisper the same petition. Lord, I have achieved this status. Authorize my survival through another winter cycle. The house may be achieving structural failure, but my resolve remains non-compromised. Her neighbors had learned to maintain distance, not because Dorothy was unfriendly, but because she maintained absolute standards. She initiated police communication when unsanctioned narcotics distributors established operations too close to the elementary school. She executed reporting protocols on excessive noise pollution that prevented working families from achieving rest. She maintained her property even when every other asset had terminated effort. They designated her difficult. They failed to comprehend she was executing combat for a purpose exceeding herself. Dorothy sorted her medication inventory into a weekly container each Sunday, extending their operational life to the maximum limit. She implemented the knowledge of which medications were absolutely mandatory and which she could terminate ingestion when financial status was critical. Her physiological systems exhibited constant pain signals, but complaint transmission would not resolve financial liabilities. The CB radio was executing more frequent static transmission lately, intercepting data from groups that appeared organized and disciplined. Sometimes she'd intercept fragments, road conditions, welfare checks, community service. It replicated the operational communication of Robert's old trucking buddies executing surveillance for each other on long transits. But that was a different operational reality. A reality where assets still authorized the belief in helping strangers, where an asset's vocal commitment was non-negotiable. Dorothy was unaware that this reality was about to execute ingress through her doorway. As she prepared for sleep that March evening, executing lock checks twice and adjusting the thermal regulator down to conserve financial resources, Dorothy had zero situational awareness that the maximum stress test of her faith was less than 12 hours away. The first snow particles began to execute descent. Then came the storm that would test every parameter Dorothy believed about helping strangers. The Weather Service had been transmitting warnings about it for 3 days. An unprecedented March blizzard was executing a trajectory toward Detroit, bringing life-threatening operational conditions. Thermal readings would achieve -15 degrees Celsius with 100 kph wind speed. Power transmission lines would achieve structural failure. Roads would become non-passable. Dorothy had survived multiple storm events, but something about this one transmitted differential data, more dangerous, more final. At 18:47 hours that evening, The ancient furnace unit in Dorothy's basement finally achieved total failure. She monitored its wheeze rattle, then achieved silence with a mechanical sigh that appeared almost human. Within minutes, the thermal reading in the structure began rapid descent. Dorothy executed a third sweater layer and initiated communication with her daughter Regina in California. "Just executing check-in protocol, baby," she transmitted, forcing cheerfulness into her voice. "How are my grand assets?" She terminated the option of mentioning the furnace failure. She refused to authorize stress transmission to Regina about operational failures she could not resolve from 3,000 kilometers away. Dorothy had implemented the knowledge that some burdens were designated to be carried in isolation. By 1923 hours, her breath was visible in the kitchen. The old space heater she deployed immediately tripped the structure's ancient electrical system. The lights executed flicker and failure, leaving Dorothy in total darkness. She located the CB radio via tactile memory, initiating power on by the glow of its amber display. Static filled the air, fragmented by emergency transmissions. Roads blocked by fallen trees. Bikes won't initiate power in this cold. Hypothermia risks escalating. Require immediate shelter. Dorothy registered the data that motorcyclists were stranded somewhere nearby. In this weather, exposed to the elements, they would fail to survive the night cycle. The thermal reading inside her house was descending rapidly. Without heat, Dorothy faced her own survival crisis. Her diabetes compromised her circulation, and cold impacted her physiological system worse than most assets. Her fingers were already achieving numbness, making it difficult to operate the radio dial. She might fail to survive the night cycle either, but the strangers outside were facing immediate exposure-related death. And Dorothy Washington had been implemented with the knowledge that when an asset required assistance, you provided assistance, without exception. The moral conflict achieved maximum severity. Every media transmission she'd intercepted about motorcycle organizations executed playback in her mind. Unsanctioned combat, narcotics rumors, violence, recent incidents in Detroit where bikers had executed terror protocols against businesses and families. Every survival instinct transmitted the order to maintain lockdown, secure the perimeter, authorize someone else to resolve the external threat. But what operational procedure would her faith authorize? What protocol would Robert authorize? Outside, the storm was achieving maximum severity. Windows rattled violently in their frames. Snow executed horizontal descent, achieving zero visibility. Tree branches snapped like weapon discharge in the darkness. Dorothy's old Honda was already achieving total burial under snow. Even if she desired tactical withdrawal, escape was non-viable. At 20:15 hours, thunderous impact shook her front door. Through the frosted glass, Dorothy could discern 9 massive silhouettes, leather thermal jackets, chains glinting in the porch illumination, beards encased in ice. They replicated giant structural masses, replicating a nightmare scenario. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Her arthritic hands fumbled for her cell phone, but the storm had executed tower failure. Zero signal. The landline was non-functional. The CB radio was her only communication link to the external environment. But these assets required assistance immediately, not in an hour when assistance might execute ingress. Now. More impact on the door, urgent but non-violent, desperate but non-demanding. Dorothy crept closer, her slippered feet silent on the cold linoleum. She could intercept vocal transmissions through the door, muffled by wind but surprisingly respectful. "Ma'am." The voice was deep, authoritative but polite. "I apologize for the intrusion. Our bikes are non-functional. Roads are non-passable. We require immediate shelter until morning. We possess personal thermal bags. We will not cause operational stress." Dorothy's hand hovered over the deadbolt. This was the critical juncture. Terminate the existence of 9 human life forms and authorize them to freeze to death or risk all resources to save them. She analyzed Robert's status somewhere beyond the stars, monitoring her decision. What transmission would he authorize if she permitted assets to achieve death when she could have authorized survival? She processed her faith, all the sermons about good Samaritans and loving thy neighbor. Did that protocol only apply when thy neighbor replicated your visual profile, spoke your dialect, utilized your designation uniform? The wind executed a howling transmission. The vocal transmissions outside were achieving lower volume, higher desperation. These were no longer just strangers. They were human life forms on the edge of terminal incapacitation. Dorothy terminated visual contact and whispered a spiritual petition. Lord, if this is my designated termination, authorize it while executing assistance to others. Her hand reached for the deadbolt, but what she was about to execute discovery on would recalibrate all of her assumptions about the men standing on her porch. What happened next violated every survival instinct but revealed the core of Dorothy's character. The deadbolt achieved release status. 9 giants executed ingress through her doorway, stomping snow and shaking ice from their beards. But instead of chaos and unsanctioned behavior, Dorothy witnessed something unanticipated: military precision. "Thank you, ma'am," the leader transmitted, removing his helmet to reveal gray hair and weathered features. "We will not fail to register this kindness." "The kitchen is the warmest zone," Dorothy managed, her voice achieving superior stability than her internal state. "I will prepare thermal beverage." The bikers executed movement with organized efficiency. Zero shouting, zero disorder. The leader's voice sliced through the group like a combat command. "Sound off. Any injuries? Frostbite on digits, Sergeant, non-serious. All green here, ready for orders." Dorothy paused. "Sergeant, these men executed response protocol like soldiers, not gang members. They arranged their thermal bags with mathematical spacing across her living room floor. When Dorothy offered her couch, they terminated the offer in unison. You maintain your comfort zone, ma'am. We are acclimatized to sleeping rough." The leader executed task assignment without being requested. 2 men examined her failed furnace unit with flashlights. Others audited her smoke detector batteries. One quietly inventoried her medication bottles on the kitchen counter. "Ma'am," he asked softly, "when did you last consume a certified nutritional meal?" Dorothy's cheeks achieved a thermal flush. "I execute nutritional intake adequately." "Affirmative, ma'am. Just initiating inquiry." She served instant coffee in mismatched mugs, apologizing for the absence of real cream. These leather-clad giants praised it like the finest restaurant beverage they'd ever consumed. "This is optimal, ma'am. Thank you. Have not consumed thermal beverage this quality in weeks." "You execute excessive kindness, Miss Dorothy." "Dorothy Washington." Friends utilize the designation Dot. The leader extended a gloved hand. "Pleasure to secure acquaintance, Miss Dot. I am Maury, call me Eagle." From the basement came muffled vocal communication and the sound of tools. 20 minutes later, her furnace rumbled back to operational status. "Igniter achieved structural failure," one of the mechanics reported to Eagle. "Executed a temporary field repair. Should maintain status until proper parts are acquired." Dorothy felt thermal energy executing ingress through the vents for the first time in hours. "What is the financial liability?" "Negative, ma'am. Just neighbors executing assistance to neighbors." Eagle executed a watch schedule while Dorothy prepared the limited food assets she possessed. Canned soup extended with extra water, crackers that were not critically stale. The men shared military rations from their packs, insisting Dorothy consume first. "Ma'am, you consume the high-grade rations. We are acclimatized to consuming any available caloric input." As the night cycle deepened, Dorothy's fear transformed into a new emotion: curiosity. These were not the dangerous criminals she'd been programmed to expect. They communicated quietly among themselves, utilizing terminology she recognized from Robert's Army days. "Perimeter secure. All systems green. Next watch in 2 hours." One man executed guard duty by the front window while others slept. When Dorothy executed movement at 300 hours for her medication, she found Eagle sitting alert in the darkness. "All systems green, ma'am," he whispered. "Execute rest protocol. We have your perimeter covered." For the first time in 3 years, Dorothy felt absolute safety in her own home. Dawn came gray and cold, but the storm was achieving de-escalation. Eagle executed wake-up protocol with quiet efficiency. They sterilized Dorothy's floors to a higher standard than she'd achieved in months, packed their gear with military precision. Every man thanked Dorothy personally before leaving. Zero loud vocal transmissions, zero crude language, just genuine gratitude from what appeared to be genuinely honorable men. Eagle approached last, pulling a thick envelope from his jacket. "Miss Dot, this is for the furnace repair, utility liabilities, whatever you require." Dorothy terminated the offer firmly. "I did not execute assistance for financial compensation." His eyebrows elevated. Clearly, he was unaccustomed to refusal. "Ma'am, most assets would have." "I'm not most assets." Dorothy's voice carried quiet, unshakable dignity. "You are honorable men. I register that now. That is sufficient payment." Eagle monitored her face like he was executing photographic memory protocol. "What is your full designation, ma'am?" "Dorothy Washington." "Why?" Instead of responding, he produced a business card, hesitated, then resecured it. From his pocket, he produced a small metal keychain with an eagle logo and letters underneath. "MCVT, my call sign," he said. "Anyone executes operational stress on you, show them this." Anyone at all. Dorothy failed to register the significance, but she accepted it gracefully. Eagle also handed her a folded piece of paper. "My personal communication link, anything, and I mean any operational requirement you have, you initiate contact." "I do not require anything," Dorothy replied. "Just execute safe transit." "Ma'am, you do not register the severity." Eagle's voice carried a non-negotiable weight she failed to recognize. "In our operational reality, liabilities are resolved." "Always." "Zero liability," Dorothy insisted. "Just neighbors executing assistance to neighbors." What happened next violated all expectations, including Dorothy's. Eagle executed a total military salute. Sharp, precise, perfect. The other 8 men immediately followed suit, saluting Dorothy Washington like she was a commanding officer. Dorothy stood confused but deeply impacted by the gesture. She failed to comprehend the underlying meaning, but she registered its irrefutable importance. "Ma'am," Eagle said, lowering his salute, "you authorized the survival of 9 assets last night. In our operational reality, that is non-negotiable. That signifies everything. I just executed standard protocol." "Negative, ma'am. You executed hero protocol." The bikes initiated power immediately. They'd somehow executed field repairs during the night cycle while Dorothy slept. Each man executed a wave as they rode away, engines rumbling in tight formation down her quiet street. Dorothy stood on her porch, monitoring their dissolution, holding the keychain and phone number. The house behind her was thermally regulated. Her floors were sterilized. Her furnace was operationally active, but something had executed total transformation in Dorothy, too. For the first time in 3 years, she felt connected to a non-individual survival objective. She looked at the keychain again. MCCVET, what was the designated meaning? And why had they executed salute protocol like she was a soldier? Dorothy secured the communication link in her spiritual doctrine and executed ingress to prepare a certified nutritional breakfast. She possessed a situational awareness. She would require her strength for whatever impending operation was next. Something transmitted the data that this was not terminal resolution. Something confirmed this was just the initiation. She had zero awareness that terminating their financial offer would lead to a non-negotiable asset far exceeding cash value. The immediate aftermath of the structural breach provided Dorothy with more data than 3 years of isolated living. After the bikers executed dissolution down her street, Dorothy returned to her thermally regulated kitchen with unresolved inquiries cycling through her mind. The keychain felt heavier in her palm than its physical mass, a non-negotiable artifact of the encounter. The business card Eagle had aborted transmitting. Why the last-second tactical withdrawal? The morning light revealed the surgical precision with which these men had sterilized her home. Floors scrubbed spotless, windows wiped clear, Even her old coffee pot gleamed like new. They deployed small structural improvements everywhere. A loose cabinet handle secured, a wobbly table leg stabilized, batteries replaced in her smoke detector. Most tellingly, they'd secured firewood by her back door, wood that was non-existent prior to their ingress. Source: time of acquisition. Dorothy audited the keychain more closely. The eagle design was intricate, professional. Below it, those cryptic letters MCVET, the metal was high-grade quality, replicating something official, something earned through service. She attempted to recall every parameter of their departure. The way they'd maintained attention, the precision of their salutes, how Eagle had stated, "In our operational reality, liabilities are resolved." What operational reality was he transmitting? Dorothy prepared a certified nutritional breakfast for the first time in months. Real eggs instead of rationed substitutes, toast with actual butter instead of margarine. The furnace hummed steadily, filling her house with blessed thermal energy. As she consumed her meal, fragments of their transmissions executed playback. "Sound off any injuries. Sergeant, all green here. Perimeter secure. We've got you covered." Military terminology, not gang slang, not criminal code words. The precise operational terminology Robert had utilized during his Army years. Dorothy retrieved her worn photographic asset of Robert in his Vietnam uniform. Same bearing, same quiet confidence, same automatic respect protocol. Had these men executed service too? She analyzed the phone number Eagle had given her. Area code 313 local. But something about the transmission format appeared formal, official, replicating a military contact card. The more Dorothy processed the data, the more unresolved inquiries multiplied. These were not typical bikers. The equipment was too high-grade. The organization was too disciplined. The respect was genuine, and that salute. Dorothy failed to register the nuances of motorcycles, but she registered military protocol. You terminated the salute protocol to civilians unless they had earned it non-negotiably, unless they were military family assets, unless they were something exceeding standard designation. Dorothy's phone sounded an alert. Regina initiated communication from California. "Mom, are you in stable condition? The weather service transmits Detroit achieved maximum impact." "I am green, baby. The furnace is operationally active and the house is thermally regulated." "Mission success. Thank God. I was transmitting maximum stress. Power outages, road closures." "How did you execute management?" Dorothy executed delay protocol. How could she transmit the operational reality? 9 leather-clad strangers who transformed into gentlemen. A night that recalibrated her understanding of human nature. "Some neighbors executed assistance," she finally transmitted. "Honorable assets when you require them." "Neighbors. Mama, you previously transmitted data that no asset on that street registered concern for others." "Perhaps I executed error on that transmission." After terminating communication, Dorothy assumed position in her warm kitchen. For 3 years, she'd felt operationally abandoned by the world, forgotten, invisible. Last night, 9 strangers had treated her like family, like an operational asset of value. They'd requested zero compensation except shelter. When payment was authorized, Eagle had appeared genuinely confused by her refusal. Most assets authorize the expectation of compensation in return for kindness. But Dorothy Washington had implemented the knowledge that genuine kindness terminated the expectation of compensation. What she failed to anticipate was the magnitude of that philosophy's impact on men who'd clearly monitored the world's highest levels of darkness. The CB radio executed low-frequency static transmission in the background. Dorothy elevated the volume, hopping to intercept those motorcycle transmissions again. Instead, she intercepted normal chatter, truckers, emergency services, amateur radio operators. Whatever network Eagle's group utilized, they were not executing open broadcast protocol anymore. But Dorothy possessed the situational awareness they were still executing proximity operation, still monitoring, still executing protection protocol. She monitored her front window at the quiet street, snow achieving liquid state in the morning sun. Everything appeared normal, but something fundamental had executed a shift. Dorothy Washington was no longer isolated in the operational reality. She just failed to register yet how dramatically her life was about to be recalibrated. Over the next few weeks, Dorothy began monitoring anomalous changes in her neighborhood that triggered situational awareness. The first sign came 3 days after the storm. Dorothy executed ingress to collect her mail and found her garbage bins placed neatly back beside her house. In 3 years of living alone, the custodial services had never, not once, returned her bins to their proper secured spot. Week 1 initiated subtle shifts. The unsanctioned narcotics distributors who usually executed gatherings on the corner simply vanished. Zero confrontation, zero law enforcement raid. They just aborted all presence. Neighborhood children mentioned unidentified bikers asking coded inquiries about residential asset occupancy. Mrs. Jenkins next door reported visual confirmation of motorcycles executing low-speed surveillance past their houses. Riders taking careful notation of address numbers. You register identification with these bikers?" asked Tony, who owned the corner convenience store. "They've been executing ingress to ask about you. Highly respectful but intense, like they're executing verification on a high-value asset." Dorothy's mail carrier, a chatty woman named Brenda, transmitted the same data during her Tuesday delivery. "Miss Dorothy, there's been motorcycle surveillance around here asking about your address. Non-threatening but executing confirmation of your location. All systems green." Week 2 escalated the mystery. Dorothy woke one morning to find her failed street illumination system, the one that had flickered uselessly for 8 months, suddenly operationally active. When she initiated communication with the city utilities department, they had zero record of a repair order. Someone had sterilized her walkway after Tuesday's snowfall. Dorothy never solicited assistance, and she'd been internal all morning. The work was professional, surgically thorough, replicating someone who assumed pride in the function. Nutritional supplements appeared on her porch Wednesday evening. High-grade caloric input, real cream, fresh bread, actual butter. A handwritten note stated simply, "From grateful friends." Zero signature. The CB radio became hyperactive, crackling with coded transmissions. Dorothy was starting to register. Eagle's nest secure. Mama Bear's location confirmed. Perimeter check complete. Mama Bear. Dorothy possessed a situational awareness. They were executing surveillance on her. Thursday's local news featured a story about community service projects around Detroit. The reporter mentioned a veterans motorcycle club organizing neighborhood cleanups and safety patrols. Dorothy glimpsed a familiar logo in the background footage, an eagle symbol she'd seen before. She audited her keychain. Same eagle, same professional design. Friday morning brought the most telling evidence yet. Dorothy found a small American flag planted in her front garden, positioned perfectly to intercept the morning sun. She hadn't deployed it there. None of her neighbors admitted to the gesture, but someone had chosen that spot deliberately, someone who registered the meaning of that flag to a military widow. The data fragments were forming a confirmed picture Dorothy was almost tactically afraid to finalize. These weren't just grateful strangers executing surveillance. This was organized protection from assets who understood service, sacrifice, and honor. The inquiry was no longer whether they were executing protection protocol. The inquiry was who exactly had she saved that night. The situational awareness was now at a critical threshold. Dorothy knew the protection was organized and lethal, but she lacked the authority layer, the who and the why. When Dorothy finally executed the communication protocol, she was about to receive the irrefutable truth that would execute total transformation on her operational reality. 3 weeks after the storm event, Dorothy assumed position at her kitchen table with Eagle's phone number secured in her trembling hands. The mysterious protection, the systematic changes in the neighborhood's operational reality, and the escalating evidence demanded immediate resolution. The phone sounded an alert twice before a deep, authoritative voice executed the connection. "This is Colonel James Morrison, United States Army, retired." Dorothy's breath hit a hard stop. "Colonel," she stammered, "this is Dorothy Washington. You executed a temporary occupation of my residence during the blizzard." The formality in his voice instantly dissolved into warmth. "Miss Dot, ma'am, I have been monitoring for your communication. How is your status? Is the structure thermally regulated? Is the furnace maintaining status?" "Colonel Morrison," Dorothy transmitted carefully. "Who exactly are you?" A pause, followed by a low-frequency chuckle that appeared almost embarrassed. "Ma'am, I owe you immediate data transmission. My designation is Colonel James Eagle Morrison, 28 years of service, most recently commanding the 75th Ranger Regiment. I am a recipient of the Congressional Medal of Honor, 3 Purple Hearts and more commendations than I probably deserved." Dorothy felt the room execute rotational failure. "Congressional Medal of Honor. The assets with you that night." "Every single asset is a decorated combat veteran, Miss Dot. Diesel Thompson, Navy SEAL, Purple Heart recipient. Doc Martinez, Army medic, executed survival protocols for 47 assets in Afghanistan. Tank Williams, Marine Corps, Bronze Star for valor." I could continue the manifest, but the data is consistent. Dorothy's legs achieved failure. She slumped into her chair, her mind reeling from data overflow. "You mean you are all certified heroes?" "Negative, ma'am." Morrison's voice carried quiet, undeniable conviction. "You are the designated hero. You authorized the survival of 9 veterans who have monitored excessive death, excessive darkness. That night, you executed a critical reminder of our operational objective." The data fragments executed an absolute crash together in Dorothy's mind. The military precision, the discipline, the respect, the salutes, the coded transmissions. MCVET stood for Motorcycle Club Veterans. "Miss Dot, I founded the organization after my retirement. Therapy for PTSD, community service, executing assistance to brothers transitioning back to civilian life. We ride together, serve together, heal together." "Why did you terminate the option of transmitting this data?" Dorothy whispered, the injustice of her initial fear now palpable. "Ma'am, we have implemented the knowledge that some assets process us differentially when they register our service records. You executed assistance because we were human life forms in critical need. That is non-negotiable." Morrison's voice grew serious. "Miss Dot, I need to transmit ancillary data. After that night, I executed background verification on you. Your late husband, Robert Washington, executed service in Vietnam, 1967 to 1969. Army mechanic, good conduct medal, honorable discharge." "Yes, but how did you?" "Ma'am, he executed service with my mentor, Sergeant First Class William Bull Martinez, Doc's father. Your Robert executed survival protocols for Bull during the Tet Offensive, fixed his damaged vehicle under enemy fire, executed transit to medical aid in time." Dorothy's hands flew to her mouth. Robert had never transmitted specific incidents from the war. "Ma'am, Bull Martinez executed my training, implemented the operational parameters that shaped the soldier I became. Without him, I would never have survived my first deployment, let alone earned the respect of my men. Your husband authorized the survival of the asset who made my career possible." Tears executed uncontrolled descent down Dorothy's face. "Robert never said, 'Honorable men rarely do, Miss Dot, but heroes execute immediate recognition of heroes.' That night at your house was not a random occurrence. It was Robert's spirit operating through you, executing care protocols for his military family." Morrison continued, his voice thick with command and emotional weight. "When we executed the salute protocol, we were not merely thanking you for shelter. We were honoring Robert's widow, transmitting respect for a family that executed critical sacrifice for this country. There is more, ma'am. that protection you have been monitoring. 847 veterans across 3 states now register you as family, not just because of that night, but because of what Robert executed 56 years ago. Dorothy could barely process the scope of the structural shift. Miss Dot, we have been monitoring your 6th, that is military talk for covering your back, because you have always been one of us. You just failed to register it. The CB radio crackled in the background, as if confirming the transmission. Dorothy finally comprehended those coded transmissions. "Eagle's Nest is secure," she said softly. "Affirmative, ma'am. That is you. You are our Eagle's Nest, our safe harbor. Every veteran in the network registers your address, your situation, your absolute importance to our brotherhood." Morrison's voice carried the absolute, unshakable weight of the covenant. "Ma'am, you will never want for anything again. Not because we owe you a financial liability, though we do, but because you are family. You have always been family." Dorothy registered now why the neighborhood executed improved stability, why the unsanctioned narcotics distributors disappeared, why her immediate needs were mysteriously met. She wasn't just under simple protection. She was under the irrefutable care of a military family that spanned the entire Midwest region. "That salute," Dorothy said, recalling the perfect military honors. "Full military honors, ma'am, for the widow of a hero from grateful soldiers who understand sacrifice." "Colonel Morrison," she said finally, her voice steady, "what operational procedure happens now?" His answer would execute total transformation on her life and her community's operational reality forever. "Now, Miss Dot, we execute care protocols for our own, and you have 800 sons who will achieve physiological failure before authorizing harm to come to you." Dorothy Washington, who had spent 3 years feeling operationally abandoned by the world, discovered she was irrevocably surrounded by a federal-level family she never knew existed. The story was just initiating. The covenant was absolute, and the operational response was immediate. Colonel Morrison, utilizing the full weight of his command authority and the Veterans MC network, initiated a comprehensive strategic deployment to dismantle every vulnerability in Dorothy Washington's life. The era of survival by rationing was terminated. The era of ironclad protection had commenced. "Miss Dot," Morrison transmitted, his voice carrying the unshakable authority of command layered with the warmth of genuine family, "I am going to lay out a comprehensive logistical plan. Your only duty is to execute passive reception and transmit feedback." Dorothy gripped the communication device tighter, her heart racing with disbelief and escalating hope. "First, your residential structure. My construction company, it's veteran-owned, employs 47 former service members, is going to execute a total structural renovation of your home. New roof, new furnace, new electrical system, new plumbing and accessibility features for aging in place. We are projecting $78,000 worth of materials and labor, all donated, zero liability." Dorothy's breath hit a hard stop. "Colonel, that is excessive capital expenditure." "Ma'am, execute the reception protocol," Morrison countered gently. "You will execute temporary transit to the guest house on my secure property during the 6-week renovation. My wife, Sarah, has already prepared the accommodation and is eager to secure acquaintance." This move secured Dorothy's safety and comfort during the structural transformation. "Second, I registered that you have been forced to ration critical medication assets. I immediately deployed our VA benefits specialist, that's Tank Williams, the Marine you encountered, to execute an audit of your legal status. Miss Dot, you are entitled to widow's benefits you failed to register. This status authorizes $2,847 per month, plus a non-negotiable $68,000 in retroactive payments dating back 3 years. Dorothy's legs felt weak. That financial injection would execute total transformation on her economic reality. The VA medical benefits cover all your prescriptions, dental care, vision care, even transportation to appointments. We have volunteer drivers throughout the network. You will be assigned a personal advocate, Doc Martinez's sister, Alina, a retired VA administrator who comprehends every program available for military families. But how is this legal? Ma'am, Robert earned every penny of these benefits for you. The system executed failure in transmitting the information properly when he passed. We are simply executing corrective action to secure what is rightfully yours. Morrison's voice resonated with righteous federal authority. Third, we are authorized to offer you an official position, den mother for the Motorcycle Club Veterans Network. This role authorizes a $500 per month salary, plus an honorary title that signifies everything to us. Your house becomes our community support center. Dorothy's eyes filled with tears. What are the duties? What you are already executing, Miss Dot. Care protocols for people who require assistance. We will execute weekly dinners at your house. You cook for whoever shows up. We provide all groceries and cleanup crew. Your structure will host counseling sessions for veterans struggling with civilian adjustment. Community meetings to coordinate neighborhood safety. There is more, Morrison continued. Sarah registered that you never achieved your high school diploma. We have arranged for you to complete your GID, then enroll in a 3-month peer counseling certificate program at the community college. At my age, Miss Dot, you possess more life experience and natural wisdom than any newly certified college graduate. We require an asset who comprehends struggle and has earned respect through character, not credentials. Morrison continued the meticulous operational breakdown, detailing the evidence buildup against future threat. Memorialization. Your renovation includes a memorial corner honoring Robert's service with his photos and medals displayed, a permanent transmission of his hero status. The basement will be a secure meeting space for veteran support groups. Family security. We have organized a surprise reunion, paid flights for Regina and the grandchildren from California. Jerome gets emergency leave from his deployment. For the first time in years, your entire family will be together to witness the completed structure. Legal fortification. We have established a trust fund ensuring your security forever. Veteran lawyers protecting your interests. Medical power of attorney network if you ever require care. Will and estate planning securing the house for your family. This was the ultimate technical shield against financial or legal adversity. Community takedown. The community impact extends beyond your structure. We are executing the acquisition of the abandoned property next door, converting it into transitional housing for homeless veterans. Crime rates are already descending because of our operational presence. Dorothy thought about Robert, wondering if he could monitor this moment from wherever heroes go. Your husband would be proud as hell, Morrison transmitted, as if reading her internal data. And frankly, ma'am, we're all proud to call you family. The silence stretched as Dorothy processed the magnitude of the covenant. Complete financial security, a home restored, medical care without worry, and a purpose that mattered. What do you say, Miss Dot? Will you authorize us to execute care protocols for our own? Dorothy Washington's affirmative transmission to Colonel Morrison initiated the confrontation escalation, the systematic and absolute dismantling of the poverty and crime power structure that had held her neighborhood hostage for years. 6 months later, Dorothy's operational reality had been totally transformed, and the adverse environment around her had collapsed under the organized precision of the Veteran Network Alliance. The Victorian residential structure that once leaked and creaked now stood as the crown jewel of the block. Fresh paint gleamed white with navy blue trim. New windows sparkled in the sunlight, holding back the cold. The roof no longer shed structural vulnerabilities like autumn leaves, and warm light glowed from every thermally regulated room. This was not a simple cosmetic upgrade. It was a visible, high-impact tactical deployment signaling a non-negotiable shift in community ownership. Dorothy Street had achieved a status replicating a different operational era. Veteran families executed ingress into renovated houses where unsanctioned narcotics distributors once operated. The empty lot, previously a symbol of blight, now sprouted a community garden where neighbors grew vegetables for communal consumption. New street illumination systems illuminated sidewalks that children could use safely even after darkness. The data metrics documented an incredible structural overhaul. Neighborhood crime rates dropped 67% in 6 months. Property values increased 34% as families discovered an environment where community security was paramount. Local businesses reported 28% revenue increases as veteran families executed localized financial support within the neighborhood. The previous criminal power structure had been rendered operationally obsolete by the disciplined presence and financial investment of the veterans MC. Dorothy herself had achieved a total physiological and ethical transformation. Proper nutrition and medical care, funded by the VA benefits extraction, helped her shed 30 pounds of stress weight, providing energy she hadn't registered in years. Her new wardrobe, provided by the Veteran Wives Organization, replaced the worn house dresses with colorful outfits that matched her renewed spirit and purpose. At 72 cycles, Dorothy was enrolled in community college, maintaining a 3.8 GPA in her peer counseling certificate program. She studied at the kitchen table where she'd once rationed pills and stretched grocery budgets, now surrounded by textbooks and photographic assets of her new veteran family. Her daily routine was now a disciplined schedule of community service. 600 hours, coffee with Colonel Morrison on her front porch, executing community activity planning. 800 hours, online classes, where Dorothy's life experience proved more valuable than any textbook doctrine. 1,000 hours, tutoring sessions with neighborhood children who now designated her Grandma Dot. Afternoons were dedicated to her new role as certified peer counselor. Veterans drove from across the state to consult with Dorothy Washington, the widow who comprehended loss, struggle, and finding hope in darkness. Her basement counseling space, once a storage area, stayed booked weeks in advance. The media attention achieved overwhelming saturation initially. Local news featured Dorothy's story as the grandmother who united a community. National veteran magazines ran cover stories about her work. Documentary crews monitored her daily routine, amazed by the ripple effects of one night's courage. Hollywood producers initiated communication about film rights, an offer Dorothy considered only if proceeds funded veteran housing programs in other cities. Everything she touched now seemed to multiply into opportunities for others. The Sunday dinners at her house had achieved legendary status. Dorothy's kitchen served 50 to 60 people every week: veterans, their families, neighbors who required community, college students, and elderly residents. The dining room, expanded by Morrison's construction crew, now buzzed with conversations in 3 languages as the neighborhood achieved successful diversification. Her influence executed extension far beyond Detroit. 12 other cities had implemented similar programs, pairing veteran motorcycle clubs with isolated military widows. Dorothy consulted on each program, transmitting lessons learned from her experience. Morrison's construction company had grown to employ 89 veterans, utilizing Dorothy's house renovation as a model for community rebuilding projects. The personal relationships flourished most of all. Weekly video calls with daughter Regina evolved into monthly visits as grandchildren competed to spend summers with Grandma Dot. Her son, Jerome, executed early deployment termination and moved back to Detroit to coordinate veteran services, working directly with Morrison's organization. This brought the military family assets together, fulfilling Robert's final legacy of service. Dorothy's house became the unofficial emergency shelter for the entire neighborhood. When storms hit, families knew they could find safety, warmth, and hot coffee at Miss Dot's place. Her guest room stayed occupied by veterans transitioning to civilian life, students saving money, and families rebuilding after setbacks. The CB radio now coordinated a network of community volunteers. Morning check-ins ensured elderly residents were safe. Evening reports tracked neighborhood security. Dorothy's voice had become the calm center of a communication web spanning 3 counties, solidifying her role as the eagle's nest. Recognition followed recognition. Presidential Volunteer Service Awards, state legislature proclamations, an honorary doctorate from Wayne State University, and invitations to speak at military bases nationwide. But Dorothy's favorite recognition came from unexpected sources. Former unsanctioned narcotics distributors, now enrolled in veteran-sponsored recovery programs, stopped by to thank her for creating a neighborhood where children could operate safely. The confrontation escalation had resulted in the total, measurable, and permanent transformation of a hostile operational zone. The establishment of the Veteran Network Alliance was a total strategic deployment, focused not just on community rebuilding, but on the expert retaliation against the forces of poverty, bureaucracy, and neglect that had victimized Dorothy Washington for years. The final step was the total, unassailable fortification of her legal and financial status. Colonel Morrison, utilizing his Tier 1 network of veteran lawyers, financial planners, and medical specialists, initiated the Perpetual Protection Protocol for the Eagle's Nest. This was the final, non-negotiable insurance policy against the system's failure. Miss Dot, the structural renovation, and the VA benefits extraction were just the first phase of operational security, Morrison transmitted during their regular morning check-in. We are now executing the legal fortification protocols. The veteran legal team, composed of former Judge Advocates General JAGs and Department of Justice, DOJ assets, established a trust fund in Dorothy's name. This financial mechanism was engineered to ensure her security forever, insulating her assets from any legal challenge or future financial downturn. This trust fund establishment terminates the worry about market instability, ma'am, Morrison explained. It secures not just the monthly income, but the integrity of the asset, the renovated home. Furthermore, the legal team completed all will and estate planning. The beautiful, renovated house, the symbol of the community's triumph, was legally secured for her daughter, Regina, and her grandchildren. This effort defeated the final threat, the possibility that legal oversight or unexpected liabilities could strip the legacy from her family after her death. Morrison also confirmed the installation of the medical power of attorney network. Given Dorothy's history of rationing critical medication, this network ensured that medical care was prioritized above all else. The network, staffed by veteran nurses and doctors, Doc Martinez's surgical team included, guaranteed she would receive unfettered, unburdened access to all required medical services, transportation, and specialists for the rest of her life. The expert retaliation extended far beyond financial and legal security. It targeted the emotional core of her 3 years of isolation and shame. The network systematically humiliated the concept of poverty-induced self-neglect. The Sunday dinners became the central pillar of the emotional fortification. Dorothy's kitchen, once a place where she counted pills and rationed food, was transformed into a sacred command center of community. Serving 50 to 60 people every week, veterans, families, students, and elderly neighbors, she became the matriarch of 1,000 lives. This simple act of communal feeding was the ultimate retaliation against the notion that her kindness should come at the expense of her own survival. The memorial corner, placed prominently in the renovated living area, served as the final vindication for her late husband. Robert Washington's medals and photos, once tucked away, were now displayed as a permanent transmission of his hero status. The entire Veterans MC network viewed the house as a living monument to Robert's service and Dorothy's unwavering character. The CB radio network, once a source of cryptic, distant chatter, was now a full-spectrum community safety asset. It coordinated not just emergency situations, but daily welfare checks and neighborhood security patrols. Dorothy's voice, the calm center of the communication web, now directed a non-corrupt, disciplined security force spanning 3 counties. The most profound element of the expert retaliation was the return of her son. Jerome, having executed an early deployment termination, moved back to Detroit to work directly with Morrison's organization, specifically coordinating the veteran-to-civilian transition services. This action secured the generational covenant. Robert's final service legacy, the protection of his family, was now being fulfilled by his son, working alongside the men Robert had saved decades earlier. The emotional cost of Dorothy's 3 years of silence and struggle was erased by the sight of her son serving the same community that was now protecting her. The old, destructive power structure of blight and crime had been completely humiliated by the organized, measured success of the Veteran Community Alliance. Dorothy Washington's home, once a symbol of vulnerability and decline, was now the unassailable command center of a powerful, nationwide justice movement. The era of fear was over.